The village of Asanka sat on the edge of the wide African savanna, a place where the wind carried both the songs of ancestors and the warnings of spirits. On quiet days, you could hear the drums from distant hills, but when storms came, the sky roared as if the gods themselves were quarreling. It was during one of those nights that Kofi was born. Thunder cracked open the heavens, and rain slammed against the earth like falling stones. Inside a small clay hut, a woman's cries mixed with the wind's wail. Her name was Amma, a humble seamstress whose hands could mend any torn fabric. But on that night, she was holding something far more precious than cloth. She was bringing a child into a world trembling with fury. When the baby's first cry filled the air, lightning struck the tree beside their hut. The villagers gasped in fear. Some said the storm came to claim the newborn. Others whispered that the gods had marked him. By morning, the storm had gone, but Amma's husband was dead, found in the fields, burned where lightning had kissed the ground. From that day on, the boy was called the Storm Child. Kofi grew up under wary eyes. He was a quiet boy, with thoughtful eyes that seemed to hold the color of distant rain clouds. While other children played under the sun, Kofi preferred the days when the sky darkened and thunder rolled. He would stand barefoot in the fields, arms open wide, feeling the wind race past him as if it carried secrets only he could hear. The villagers didn't like that. They said storms followed him. Some children were told not to play near him. And though Amma tried to shield her son from the cruel whispers, Kofi heard them all. The storm child brings trouble. Keep him away when thunder speaks. But Amma's love was fierce. Every evening she held him close, brushing her fingers through his hair. "You are not cursed, my son," she whispered. "You were born in a storm because you are strong enough to stand in one." One evening, dark clouds gathered suddenly over Asanka. The villagers hurried home, but Kofi walked toward the open fields, drawn by a sound that seemed to call his name. The wind howled, bending the tall grass around him. Lightning flashed, once, twice, until the sky burned white. Amma ran after him, her heart pounding. "Kofi! Come back!" she shouted. But the boy stood still, his small figure glowing faintly in the stormlight. A bolt of lightning struck the ground just a few feet away. The earth hissed and smoked. Yet Kofi did not flinch. Instead, he lifted, his hand slightly, eyes wide not with fear, but with wonder. For a moment, he felt it. A pulse of energy rushing through him, fierce but strangely gentle, like the heartbeat of the sky itself. Amma reached him and pulled him close, trembling. "Don't ever run toward the storm again," she cried, but Kofi's gaze lingered on the clouds above. He didn't understand it yet, but deep within, something had awakened, a strange connection between his heart and the heavens. That night, the villagers whispered again. They said the lightning had spared him because he belonged to it. They said no mortal child could walk through thunder and remain unharmed. Amma stayed awake, watching her son sleep peacefully beside her. Outside, the storm faded into silence, but every few moments the horizon flickered faintly, as if the lightning itself refused to leave him. She knew then that the world would never see her child as ordinary. But she also knew this: the same sky that cursed him might one day need him. And as dawn broke over the golden fields of Asanka, the boy who danced with storms opened his eyes, unaware that his story had only just begun. Seasons passed over the village of Asanka, painting the savanna with green rains and red dust. The years softened many things, but not the villagers' fear of Kofi, the boy born beneath lightning. By the time he turned 12, whispers followed him like shadows. Chickens stopped laying eggs near the family hut. When goats went missing, people said the sky spirits took them because of him. And every time thunder rumbled over distant hills, eyes turned toward Amma's home, Amma tried to keep her son busy, helping her sew, fetching water, learning stories of the ancestors. But Kofi's spirit was restless. He could feel something inside him stirring, something that hummed when clouds gathered, something that made his skin tingle when the air grew heavy with rain. It began one afternoon when Kofi argued with a group of boys by the river. They mocked him, called him Lightning's orphan. His hands clenched, his heart raced. And then, from the clear blue sky, a single spark flashed above their heads, bright and sharp, gone in an instant. The boys screamed and ran. Kofi froze, staring at the sky, his breath shaking. The sun still shone, but the air smelled faintly of burnt grass. He said nothing about it when he went home. But that night, as he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deep within him had answered his anger. Days turned into weeks, and the strange signs grew stronger. When Kofi was sad, clouds gathered. When he smiled, the air felt lighter. Sometimes, even on bright mornings, faint lightning shimmered on the horizon. Quick, like a blink, as if the sky was watching him. Amma noticed first. She began to mark the days, counting how often the sky mirrored her son's moods. Fear crept into her heart. She loved Kofi more than her own life, but she knew what would happen if the village ever found out. One evening, as the last light faded, Amma sat by the window, her needle trembling in her hands. "The spirits are stirring again," she whispered. Kofi looked up from the floor, confused. "Mama, do you think the storms are angry with me?" Amma forced a smile. "No, my son. The sky only echoes those who can hear it. But some gifts are not meant to be seen by all. But secrets never stay buried in a sanka for long." One morning, the village chief, a stern man named Chief Adu, sent word that strange weather patterns had angered the farmers. The rains had come too early, then too fierce. Crops drowned in their own roots. "The balance of the sky has been broken," he declared, "and the spirits must be appeased." The elder priestess, Nana Efua, was called to read the omens. Her skin was wrinkled like the bark of old trees, her eyes sharp as fire. She burned herbs, chanted, and raised her staff to the heavens. When lightning flashed above the sacred tree, though there were no clouds, the people gasped. Nana Efua turned slowly toward the crowd. "A child of thunder walks among us," she said, her voice trembling. "The sky spirits are restless. That child will either bring salvation or destruction." The village fell silent. Every head turned toward the small hut at the edge of the savannah, Amma's hut. That night, the wind carried dread through Asanka. The sky darkened once more, but this storm was different. The thunder rolled low and endless, and lightning tore the sky again and again until it looked as though the heavens were splitting apart. Trees were uprooted, roofs ripped away. The river swelled and flooded the fields, washing away what little the farmers had left. When dawn came, devastation lay across the land, and with it, blame. "The storm child," cried one man. "He has called the wrath of the gods." "It was his doing," shouted another. "He must leave before he destroys us all." Amma stood in front of their hut, shielding Kofi with her arms as stones of accusation flew sharper than words. "He is just a boy," she pleaded, but her cries were drowned by the fury of the crowd. Chief Adu stepped forward, his face carved from sorrow and tradition. "Amma," he said, "we have respected you long enough. But your son's curse cannot remain here. Leave Asanka before the next storm takes us all." That night, Amma packed what little they had, a few cloths, her sewing needles, and a loaf of dried bread. Kofi stood silently beside her, eyes wide with confusion. "Are we running away, Mama?" he asked softly. Amma knelt and cupped his face. Tears glistened in her eyes. "No, my son," she said, her voice breaking. "We are going where the storm cannot find us." Outside, lightning flickered one last time over the village. Kofi looked up, and though fear should have filled him, something else stirred. A strange pull, like the sky was calling him again. As they disappeared into the night, the storm faded behind them. But in its silence, a new path was forming, one that would lead Kofi to his destiny. The night they left Asanka, the moon hid behind clouds as if ashamed to watch. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of wet earth and sorrow. Amma walked ahead, her feet dragging through the mud, a small bundle balanced on her head. Behind her, Kofi followed, clutching her hand, silent and wide-eyed. The village lights faded behind them, swallowed by darkness. They didn't know where they were going, only that they could not turn back. For 2 days, they walked through the tall grasslands, sleeping under trees, and eating the little bread Amma had carried. By the 3rd day, the sky turned gray again, not with rain this time, but with exhaustion and hunger. Finally, they came upon a forgotten hut by a quiet river, its roof broken, its walls leaning like an old man too tired to stand. It wasn't much, but to Amma, it was enough. "We will rest here," she said, her voice thin but steady. Life in exile was hard. The mornings were cold, and nights were colder. Amma tried to keep their spirits alive, sewing pieces of old cloth together to make blankets, singing soft lullabies when the wind howled too loud. Kofi gathered water and fruit, watching the skies more than the ground. He felt something changing within him, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him, a rhythm that pulsed with the clouds. When thunder rolled far away, he didn't feel fear. He felt home. Sometimes he stood by the river and closed his eyes, listening. The water whispered softly, but above that, he could hear it. The faint hum of energy, like drums calling from the sky. He began to sense when the storms would come. Sometimes, even before the clouds appeared, Amma noticed. She said nothing, but fear lived quietly behind her eyes. Each time Kofi's gaze lingered on the horizon, she saw the reflection of her husband's death in the lightning. Weeks turned into months. The rain became scarce, and Amma's health began to fade. She coughed through the nights, her breath rattling like dry leaves. Kofi tried to be strong, but his small hands could not gather enough food. He fished in the river, brought roots and berries, yet Amma grew weaker each day. One evening, when the sky was a pale orange and the air felt still, Amma called her son close. "Kofi," she whispered, her hand trembling in his. "Promise me. Promise you will never hate who you are. The world may call you cursed, but I know. The storm chose you for a reason." Kofi pressed his forehead to her hand, tears falling freely. "I don't want to be chosen," he said. "I just want you to be well." Amma smiled faintly. The sky always tests its children before it blesses them. That night, as Amma slept, Kofi stepped outside. The wind had changed, strange, electric. Clouds were gathering once again over the plains, and lightning flickered in the distance. He stood barefoot in the damp grass, staring at the storm as it grew. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with a strange familiarity, as though the heavens were calling his name. When the first bolt of lightning split the sky, Kofi didn't run. He spread his arms wide. The light flashed, blinding and white, striking a nearby tree with a sound that shook the earth. He fell to his knees, but instead of pain, he felt warmth, power, life. It surged through him, filling his veins with energy that shimmered beneath his skin. His fingertips glowed faintly, like embers. And then he heard it, a deep, resonant voice carried by thunder itself. "Do not fear what you are." Kofi gasped and looked around, but there was no one, only the sky, roaring and alive. He lifted his hands slowly, watching as tiny sparks danced across his palms. Harmless, beautiful. They didn't burn, they soothed. When he touched a wounded bird nearby, the sparks faded into its feathers, and it stirred, alive again. Kofi stared in disbelief. The lightning that once brought death now flowed through him with life. When he returned to the hut, Amma was awake, eyes wide with wonder and tears. She had seen the flashes outside and thought she'd lost him. But when Kofi entered, glowing softly in the darkness, she felt no fear, only awe. The storm passed quietly that night, leaving the land smelling of renewal. Amma fell asleep with peace in her heart, for the first time in months, and Kofi lay awake beside her, staring at the stars, his body still buzzing with energy. He didn't understand it yet, but deep down he knew this was only the beginning. The storm was not his curse, it was his calling. When dawn broke, the world smelled of rain and rebirth. The storm had left behind glistening leaves, silver puddles, and a silence that felt sacred. Amma slept peacefully, her breathing steady, lighter than it had been in months. But Kofi could not sleep. The power still hummed beneath his skin, like a song without words. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of the night before. The lightning, the glowing tree, the voice that had spoken from the clouds. He had touched something divine, and it was calling him again. That morning, he went to fetch water from the river. But when he looked into its glassy surface, he didn't see his reflection. He saw the mountains, distant and shrouded in mist. They rose from the earth like the backs of sleeping giants, crowned with storm clouds that never drifted away. The villagers once called that place Matnyaku, the mountain of the sky spirits. They said no one who entered its storm ever returned. Kofi felt a pulse in his chest. A whisper brushed against his ear. "Come!" He stumbled backward, breathing hard. The voice was real, not in his head, but in the air. When he returned home, Amma was awake and sitting by the doorway, watching him with gentle eyes. She seemed to know without words. "You've been chosen," she said softly. "The mountain calls only those who can bear its truth." Kofi wanted to protest, to say he couldn't leave her. But she smiled, weak but certain. "My son, I am no longer afraid. Go, and find who you are meant to be." Her words broke something in him, and forged something new. The next morning, Kofi set out for Metniaku. He carried nothing but a small gourd of water, and the old drum Amma had saved. From his father's belongings, the same drum his father used to call the rain. The path to the mountain wound, through forests alive with cicadas and the cries of unseen birds. The deeper he went, the more the world changed. The air grew thick, the wind restless. The trees leaned in close, their roots whispering beneath his feet. By nightfall, he reached the base of the mountain, a towering wall of rock veiled in constant mist. Lightning flickered along its ridges like veins of gold. Kofi hesitated. The earth rumbled faintly beneath him, as though the mountain itself was breathing. He took a step forward, then another. Each step felt heavier, as though the mountain was testing his resolve. The wind howled, pulling at his clothes, whispering words he couldn't understand. Finally, he found shelter beneath a rocky outcrop and lit a small fire. He placed the drum before him and began to play softly, the rhythm his father once played before the rains came. The sound echoed strangely, carried upward by the wind. And then the sky answered. Lightning struck the mountaintop, illuminating the entire valley. The ground shook. The fire went out, and Kofi stood alone in darkness, except for the faint glow that began to rise around him. It wasn't coming from the sky this time. It was coming from him. The air filled with a low hum, and before him appeared a figure made of storm and light, tall, shifting, with eyes like distant thunderclouds. Kofi fell to his knees. The figure spoke, its voice both gentle and powerful, like rain over drums. "You are the child of the storm, born of balance and chaos." Kofi looked up, trembling. "Why me?" The spirit's voice rolled through him like thunder. "Because the world has forgotten the old harmony. Man blames the sky for his suffering, but it is his greed that broke the bond. You carry the gift to restore it." Kofi's heart raced. "I don't know how. You will learn. But first, you must face the storm within yourself." The spirit lifted its hand, and lightning surrounded Kofi in a blinding flash. His mind flooded with visions of burning fields, crying villagers, rivers turned dry. He saw his father's death again, but this time from above. The storm had not chosen him in cruelty. It had answered him. His father's final song had called the lightning, not as punishment, but as power misused. The spirit's voice softened. "Your father sought to command the storm. You must learn to dance with it." The light faded. The figure began to dissolve into mist. "When the storm returns, remember, you are not its victim. You are its vessel." And with that, the mountain fell silent again. Kofi stood there, drenched and shaking. The lightning had vanished, but a strange calm filled him, like he'd been cleansed from the inside out. He lifted his father's drum, and when he struck it once, the sound was deeper. Alive. The clouds above responded with a soft roll of thunder. Not violent, but warm, like applause. He smiled through his tears. For the first time, he didn't fear the storm. He understood it. As the first rays of dawn touched the mountain, Kofi turned to descend, ready to face a world that had once cast him out. But now he carried the sky within him. When Kofi descended from Matniaku, the land below looked different, drier, emptier, and older. Weeks had passed since he left, but the world felt as if years had gone by. The river that once whispered beside their hut was now a thin line of dust. Trees stood brittle and bare, their leaves turned to ash by the unending sun. The rains had not come, and the people of Asanka were starving. Kofi's feet trembled as he reached the familiar plains. The air smelled of drought and despair. He thought of Amma, her frail smile, her promise that she would wait. His steps quickened. When he reached their small hut, it stood silent. The door hung open, swaying in the wind. Inside, the light was dim. Amma lay on her sleeping mat, wrapped in the faded blanket she had sewn. Her body was still. Her face was calm. Too calm. Kofi fell to his knees, the world collapsing around him. He pressed his forehead against her hands. They were cold. For the first time in months, the sky was clear, painfully blue. No cloud mourned her passing. Kofi's chest burned. The power within him stirred restlessly, but he clenched his fists. "No," he whispered. "Not like this." He carried her outside, laid her gently beneath the old tree by the river's edge, and covered her in white cloth. When the wind brushed his cheek, it carried a whisper. "Do not fear what you are." He looked up. The mountains were distant, but the clouds above them were beginning to move, slow and deliberate. That night, Kofi returned to Asanka. The villagers gasped when they saw him. Some stepped back in fear. Others whispered prayers. He was taller now, his eyes brighter, his presence strange. The air itself seemed to bend around him. An old man stepped forward, one of the elders who had once cursed him. "You should not be here," he said. "You bring storms." Kofi met his gaze, steady and calm. "Maybe it's time the storm spoke for itself." He walked past them to the center of the village, the same place where they had cast him out. He placed his father's drum on the ground. The air grew heavy. The villagers watched in silence as he began to play. The rhythm was slow at first, a heartbeat of the earth, then faster, louder. The sky, as if recognizing an old song, began to darken. Children clung to their mothers. The elders cried out, "Stop him! He will bring death again." But Kofi did not stop. He closed his eyes, letting the thunder inside him answer the rhythm. The first bolt of lightning split the sky, but this time it struck not in anger. It struck the fields beyond the village, where the dry soil waited. Moments later, rain began to fall, not a storm of destruction, but a steady, life-giving rain. The villagers froze. The earth drank eagerly, steam rising from the parched ground. Children ran into the open, laughing, lifting their faces to the sky. Kofi fell to his knees, tears mixing with the rain. Amma's words echoed in his mind. "The storm chose you for a reason." But the balance was not yet restored. The lightning grew stronger, uncontrolled. Thunder rolled endlessly, the clouds swirling darker and darker. Kofi realized it wasn't just rain. It was too much. The storm was feeding on his pain. His grief had woken something deeper. He dropped the drum and raised his hands. Enough! The sky rumbled, unwilling to listen. Then he heard it again. The same voice from the mountain, calm and powerful. "Dance with it." He stood. His body glowed faintly with light as he stepped into the rain. He closed his eyes, lifted his arms, and began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. The lightning followed his motion, tracing his steps like a luminous echo. The villagers watched in awe as Kofi's dance became a language, a conversation with the heavens. Each spin, each beat of his feet, tamed the wild storm. The thunder softened, the clouds lightened, the downpour gentled into mist. When he stopped, the sky broke open, and sunlight poured through. The villagers fell to their knees. The elder who had cursed him approached, tears streaming down his face. "We were blind," he said. "Forgive us, storm child." Kofi looked at them, the people who had banished him, who had feared him all his life, and saw not hatred now, but remorse. He smiled faintly. "The storm forgives when you listen to it." Days later, the fields were green again. Rivers flowed. The air smelled of promise. The story of the boy who danced with lightning spread beyond Asanka, carried by traders, travelers, and wandering storytellers. They said he had learned to command the sky, but those who saw him knew the truth. He did not command it. He became one with it. Kofi built a small shrine for Amma by the river, where she rested beneath the flowering tree. Every sunset, he played her favorite rhythm on the old drum, and when thunder rolled gently across the distant hills, he knew she was listening. Years passed. Children grew up hearing tales of the storm dancer, the boy who brought back the rain. Some said they had seen him walking the plains at dawn, barefoot, lightning flickering softly around his hands. Others said he had joined the spirits of the mountain, dancing eternally among the clouds. But in Asanka, when the skies darkened and thunder rumbled softly, the people smiled and whispered, "Kofi is home." The rain stayed that year. The rivers filled again. Crops grew thick and tall across the plains of Asanka, and laughter returned to the village that once wept in fear. But Kofi, the storm child, was gone. The villagers searched the riverbanks, the fields and the hills beyond, calling his name. Only the wind answered, carrying his rhythm through the trees, the soft echo of thunder far away. Some said he had vanished into the heart of the storm. Others swore they saw him walking toward the horizon, his silhouette glowing against a curtain of rain. No one truly knew. What they did know was this: when he danced, the sky had listened. When he forgave, the heavens had opened. And when he left, peace had returned. A week after the rain, they buried Amma beside the old tree by the river, the place she loved, where she used to sing while sewing under the shade. The villagers built her a small stone marker. Upon it, they carved a single line: Mother of the Storm. That night, as lightning rolled faintly in the distance, the people gathered by her grave. They brought drums, candles, and offerings of grain and water. The village chief, his voice thick with emotion, said, "This land was healed by a boy we once cast out. Let us never forget his name." From that day forward, they built a shrine at the heart of Asanka, a circle of carved wood and smooth stones, crowned by a symbol of a dancing figure surrounded by spirals of light. They called it the Temple of the Lightning Dancer. Travelers came from faraway lands to see it. Some brought offerings of drums, others left silver bracelets or charms of rain. And whenever thunder rumbled softly above, the villagers would bow their heads and whisper, "The storm dancer blesses the sky." Generations passed. Children grew up beneath gentler skies, and when rain fell, they ran into it with joy instead of fear. At night, under firelight, the elders told the story. Once, long ago, there was a boy born in thunder. The people feared him, for lightning followed his heart. But when the land was dying, he returned and danced with the storm. The heavens wept, the earth lived, and peace came again. And the children would ask, "Grandmother, is it true? Can someone really dance with lightning?" The old women would smile, their eyes shining like distant rain. "Ah," they'd say, "truth and legend are not enemies." Sometimes the sky hides both in the same cloud. Some nights, when the air is heavy and still, and the moon hides behind clouds, the wind carries a familiar rhythm. Faint drumming, like footsteps across the heavens. Lightning flickers far away, tracing the horizon in graceful arcs. The people of Asanka know that sound. They smile and step outside their homes to watch the sky. For in every flash, they see him, a figure moving among the clouds, arms wide, feet light as wind, dancing with the thunder once more. And in that moment, they remember. The boy who was once feared became their protector. The outcast became a legend, and the storm that once brought terror became the rhythm of life itself. Even now, when rain kisses the earth, the villagers whisper, "Kofi dances still." And if you listen closely, beyond the roar of thunder, beyond the rush of rain, you just might hear the beat of his drum calling from the sky. The storm child, the lightning dancer, the legend who taught the world to listen to the rain.